The quantum transport beam dispersed, leaving Kira Patel standing at the entrance of the Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences. Her dark eyes widened as she took in the impossible architecture before her, a structure that seemed to defy not just gravity, but several other fundamental laws of physics. The building's crystalline spires twisted through dimensions she could barely perceive, their surfaces reflecting light from 3 different suns in colors her human brain struggled to process. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, adjusting the universal translator at her throat. The device hummed softly, transforming the cacophony of alien languages around her into comprehensible speech. As the first human ever accepted into the Institute's prestigious quantum mechanics program, she knew all eyes, whether they were compound, singular, or existing in multiple dimensions, would be on her. Through the grand entrance, beings of all descriptions moved with purpose. A group of meridians, their bodies composed entirely of shifting mathematical equations, floated past her. A Volari scholar, its consciousness distributed across a swarm of crystalline spheres, chimed a greeting that her translator rendered as, "Watch your step, carbon-based." Kira checked her quantum tablet one more time. Laboratory Omega 7, her first class with the renowned Dr. Xyrix. The name alone made her pulse quicken. His papers on transdimensional probability mechanics had revolutionized space travel across 17 galaxies. He was also, according to her preliminary research, notoriously skeptical of primitive species attempting advanced physics. The laboratory itself was a marvel of alien engineering. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with the flow of quantum energy. Workstations hovered at different heights, each adapted to the unique physiological needs of various species. Kira found an empty station near the back, one actually designed for bipedal humanoids. "Ah, our newest experiment arrives." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Dr. Xyrix materialized at the front of the lab, his form a constantly shifting array of geometric patterns that hurt Kira's eyes if she looked too directly at him. "I trust you found your way without too much difficulty. Your species does possess basic spatial awareness, yes?" Scattered laughter rippled through the room. Kira forced herself to stay calm, remembering the words of her mentor back on Earth, "They'll underestimate you. Let them." "Yes, Professor," she replied evenly. "Though I admit your quantum architecture is far more elegant than anything we've achieved on Earth. The way you've integrated 11-dimensional space into 3-dimensional manifestation is particularly fascinating." Dr. Xyrix's patterns shifted slightly, surprise, perhaps. "Indeed. Though I wonder if you truly comprehend what you're observing, or if you're simply repeating terms you've memorized." He gestured with what might have been an appendage, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the room. "Today's challenge is simple. Before you is a standard transdimensional wave function. Even your primitive quantum computers should be able to process this level of mathematics." Kira studied the equation floating before her. Simple. The function was anything but. It twisted through multiple probability states, its variables shifting between defined and undefined states faster than her eyes could track. But there was something familiar about its movement, something that reminded her of. "You have until the end of this session to solve it," Dr. Xyrix announced. "Though perhaps our human guest would prefer to start with something more basic. Binary mathematics, perhaps." More laughter, sharper this time. Kira ignored it, her mind racing. The equation's movement wasn't random. It pulsed, flowed, almost like. "Professor," she said, her voice cutting through the chuckles. "This function, it's exhibiting properties similar to fluid dynamics, isn't it?" The laughter stopped. Dr. Xyrix's geometric patterns froze momentarily. "Explain." Kira stood, approaching the hologram. "The wave function isn't just moving through probability states, it's flowing between them. On Earth, we study similar patterns in fluid mechanics. The mathematics of how water moves through obstacles isn't so different from how this function navigates probability space." She reached into the hologram, her fingers tracing the equation's path. If we apply the Navier-Stokes equations, modified for quantum states. Her hands moved quickly, rearranging variables, adding new terms. The hologram shifted, its chaotic movements becoming more ordered, more purposeful. Impossible, someone whispered. But it wasn't impossible. The equation was stabilizing, finding a new form that bridged the gap between Earth's primitive mathematics and advanced alien theory. Dr. Zyrix's patterns had become completely still. You solved it. Using fluid dynamics. Using Earth mathematics. Sometimes, Kira said quietly, the simplest solutions come from unexpected places. The laboratory had fallen completely silent. In that moment, Kira knew she had done more than solve an equation. She had taken the first step toward proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Dr. Zyrix's form flickered rapidly, a sign of intense computation. Well, he said finally, his tone unreadable. Perhaps this semester will be more interesting than anticipated. Kira returned to her workstation, her heart pounding but her expression carefully neutral. This was just the beginning, she knew. The real challenges, and the real opportunities to prove humanity's worth, were still to come. News of Kira's unorthodox solution spread through the Galactic Institute like a quantum wave collapse. As she made her way to the Institute's grand library the next day, she could feel the shift in how others perceived her, no longer just a curiosity, but a potential threat to established paradigms. The library itself defied conventional description. Information wasn't stored in books or data crystals, but in strands of pure energy that twisted through space like auroras. Beings of various species floated or walked or phased between the strands, absorbing knowledge directly into their consciousness. Quite different from your paper books, isn't it? The voice chimed like crystal wind. A Solarian named Vex for 27 materialized beside her, its form a complex lattice of light and energy. Unlike most others, Vex had shown genuine curiosity about Earth's scientific methods since Kira's arrival. Actually, Kira replied, smiling, it reminds me of neural networks. The way information flows and connects, it's not so different from how our brains work. Fascinating comparison, Vex hummed. Though I suspect Dr. Zyrix would. Would what, precisely? The geometric patterns of Dr. Zyrix materialized between them, his form seeming to absorb the library's light. Perhaps question how a species that only recently discovered quantum mechanics could possibly comprehend neural architecture on a cosmic scale. Kira straightened her spine. Professor, I was actually hoping to discuss yesterday's equation. I've been working on an expansion of the fluid dynamics principle that might. Ah yes, your creative interpretation. His patterns shifted in what she had learned to recognize as amusement. A lucky correlation, nothing more. But since you seem so eager to prove yourself, perhaps you're ready for a real challenge. The air between them shimmered, and a new equation materialized. This one was different, darker, more complex, its variables shifting through states that seemed to devour light itself. The darkness equation, Vex whispered, their luminous form dimming slightly. But Professor, even the collective minds of Centauri Prime couldn't. This equation, Dr. Zyrix continued, ignoring the interruption, has remained unsolved for 3 centuries. It appears to describe the behavior of dark matter at quantum scales, but every attempted solution has ended in mathematical paradox. Perhaps our human guest would like to apply some Earth physics to it. Fluid dynamics, perhaps. Or maybe the mathematics of cooking recipes. The mocking tone was clear, even through the translator. But Kira barely heard it. She was transfixed by the equation's movement. Unlike yesterday's problem, this one didn't flow, it danced. The variables didn't just shift through states, they moved in patterns that seemed almost musical. 3 days, Dr. Zyrix announced. That's how long you have to admit the limits of human mathematics. Though I suspect you'll reach that conclusion much sooner. As he disappeared, Vex turned to Kira. You don't have to accept this challenge. The darkness equation has driven some of our greatest minds to the edge of sanity. But Kira was already pulling out her quantum tablet, her fingers flying across its surface. Vex, what do you know about Earth music theory? Music theory? What could that possibly have to do with dark matter quantum states? Maybe nothing, Kira admitted. But look at how these variables move. They're not random. They're following a pattern, like notes in a symphony. And on Earth, we've been studying the mathematics of music for thousands of years. She began extracting data strands from the library's collection, weaving them together with her tablet's display. The Pythagoreans believed that mathematics was music and music was mathematics. They found patterns in harmony that predicted astronomical movements. What if the same principles apply here, just at a quantum scale? Vex's form pulsed with skepticism. You're suggesting that dark matter follows musical rules. I'm suggesting that patterns exist everywhere in the universe, Kira said, her eyes never leaving the dancing equation. And sometimes the key to understanding them comes from unexpected places. As she worked, other students began to gather, drawn by the infamous equation's presence. Some watched with curiosity, others with barely concealed derision. But Kira didn't notice. She was lost in the mathematics, her mind dancing between Earth's ancient wisdom and the furthest reaches of modern physics. What none of them realized, not even Dr. Zyrex, was that Kira wasn't just trying to solve an equation. She was about to demonstrate that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or even its mathematics, but in its ability to find connections where others saw only chaos. The darkness equation continued its deadly dance before her, but now, for the first time in 3 centuries, someone was beginning to hear its music. And in that music lay the key to understanding one of the universe's greatest mysteries. The Institute's quantum computation chamber hummed with energy as Kira entered her second day of work on the darkness equation. The chamber was designed to enhance mathematical visualization, its walls shifting to display calculations in real time. Around her, other beings worked on their own projects, their forms illuminated by the ethereal glow of quantum computations. Still pursuing your musical theory? Dr. Zyrex's voice resonated through the chamber, his geometric form materializing beside her workstation. I must admit, watching you attempt to apply primitive Earth concepts to advanced quantum mechanics has been entertaining. But Kira barely registered his mockery. She was too absorbed in the patterns emerging before her. The darkness equation had been transformed into a 3-dimensional musical score, its variables arranged like notes on an infinite staff. As she watched, quantum states shifted like chord progressions, dark matter coefficients moving in perfect harmony. Professor, she said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion, have you ever heard of the Mozart effect? Ah, more Earth trivia. How charming. On Earth, we discovered that certain musical patterns could enhance cognitive function and spatial reasoning. But what we didn't fully understand was why. Her fingers danced across the quantum interface, adjusting variables. What if these patterns aren't just affecting our brains? What if they're fundamental to the universe itself? A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the unusual display. Vex 427 hovered nearby, their luminous form pulsing with interest. Even some of the more skeptical students were watching intently. Observe, Kira continued, manipulating the equation. When we arrange the quantum states according to harmonic principles, patterns emerge. The dark matter isn't just moving randomly, it's oscillating in perfect fifths, following the same mathematical ratios that govern musical harmony. Absurd, declared a Centaurian professor who had joined the audience. Dark matter cannot be reduced to simple musical mathematics. Simple. Kira smiled, though exhaustion pulled at her features. There's nothing simple about it. These are the same patterns that Bach used in his fugues, that Einstein played on his violin while working on relativity. The mathematics of harmony is as complex as any quantum equation. She expanded the display, filling the chamber with a visual representation of her calculations. The darkness equation's variables moved like notes in a cosmic symphony, each quantum state shift corresponding to a precise musical interval. Watch what happens when we apply the Fibonacci sequence, another pattern found in both music and nature. The equation transformed again, its structure shifting into a new configuration. The paradox that's stumped everyone isn't a paradox at all. It's a harmony we weren't ready to hear. Dr. Zyrix's patterns had become erratic, a sign of intense calculation. This is unprecedented. But surely you don't expect us to believe that human music theory could unlock secrets that have eluded our greatest minds for centuries? Why not? Kira challenged, her fatigue forgotten in the heat of discovery. Throughout human history, our greatest breakthroughs have come from finding connections between seemingly unrelated things. Newton connected falling apples to planetary motion. Einstein linked time to space. Why can't dark matter follow the same mathematical principles as a Bach cantata? The chamber had fallen silent except for the hum of quantum computations. Even the most skeptical observers couldn't deny the patterns emerging before them. The darkness equation, for the first time, was beginning to make sense. But as Kira prepared to input the final calculations, warning signals suddenly flared across her display. The equation was becoming unstable, its harmonies threatening to collapse into chaos. "Stop this immediately," Dr. Zyrix commanded. "You're going to overload the quantum matrix." "No," Kira insisted, her fingers flying across the interface. "It's not overloading, it's reaching resonance. Like a crystal glass singing at its natural frequency. We just need to stabilize the harmony." The chamber's lights flickered as energy surged through the computational matrix. Students began backing away as the air itself seemed to vibrate with mathematical potential. But Kira stood her ground, her eyes fixed on the dancing equations before her. In that moment, she wasn't just a human student trying to prove herself. She was a conductor, leading a cosmic orchestra in a symphony that had waited centuries to be heard. And somewhere in that symphony lay the key to understanding not just dark matter, but the very nature of reality itself. The quantum computation chamber pulsed with energy as Kira's mathematical symphony reached its crescendo. Warning signals blared across every interface, their urgent tones harmonizing with the equation's oscillations in an eerily perfect counterpoint. "Shut it down." Dr. Zyrix's geometric patterns flared with alarm. The computational matrix can't handle these energy levels. But Kira remained focused, her hands moving across the quantum interface like a pianist in the final movement of a concerto. "Just a few more moments," she breathed. "The pattern is almost complete." Around her, reality itself seemed to waver. The chamber's walls rippled with quantum fluctuations, dark matter equations dancing through dimensions that shouldn't have been visible to human eyes. Several students had already fled, while others watched in fascinated horror as centuries of established physics threatened to unravel. "Look!" Vex 427's crystalline voice cut through the chaos. "The harmonic convergence, it's stabilizing." They were right. The warning signals were fading, replaced by a new sound, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the fabric of spacetime itself. The darkness equation's variables, once chaotic and paradoxical, now moved in perfect synchronization, following a pattern as old as the universe. "Impossible," Dr. Zyrix whispered, all traces of condescension gone from his voice. "You've actually done it." "But how?" Kira stepped back from her interface, allowing the equation to play out its cosmic melody. "We were all looking at it wrong," she explained, her voice quiet but steady. "Everyone tried to force dark matter to follow conventional quantum mechanics. But what if the universe itself is more like a symphony than a mathematical proof?" The chamber's displays showed the evidence in stark clarity. Dark matter wasn't just responding to musical mathematics, it was generating them. Every quantum state shift followed harmonic principles that had been recognized by human musicians millennia before the first quantum computer was built. "The Pythagoreans called it the music of the spheres," Kira continued. They believed that mathematical harmony governed everything from musical notes to planetary motion. They were right, they just couldn't see far enough. The same patterns appear everywhere, from Bach's fugues to quantum mechanics to the behavior of dark matter itself. Dr. Zyrix's form shifted through complex geometries as he processed this revelation. But this goes against everything we thought we knew about quantum physics. Does it? Kira gestured at the still dancing equation. Or does it just show us a deeper pattern we weren't ready to see? Human scientists have always looked for unity in apparent chaos. That's how we discovered gravity, relativity, quantum mechanics. We're not just pattern-matching machines, we're pattern-finding artists. The chamber had fallen completely silent now, every being present transfixed by the mathematical dance before them. The darkness equation, for 3 centuries an impenetrable mystery, now played out its solution in a grand cosmic fugue. Your species, Dr. Zyrix said slowly, continues to surprise me. We assumed that without advanced quantum computers, without multidimensional consciousness, without centuries of interstellar scientific development, you couldn't possibly contribute to advanced physics. We were wrong. Kira smiled. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from looking at old problems in new ways. Humans might be young compared to other species, but we've spent our entire history trying to understand the patterns that govern our world. From cave paintings to classical music to quantum mechanics, we've always known, somehow, that everything is connected. As if in response, the equation shifted again, revealing new layers of harmony in its quantum dance. Students who had fled earlier were now returning, drawn by the breathtaking display of mathematical beauty. Even the most skeptical professors watched in stunned silence as human musical theory rewrote their understanding of dark matter. I believe, Vex for 27 chimed softly, we owe humanity an apology. And perhaps, a thank you. But Kira wasn't done yet. As the equation stabilized in its new harmonic state, she noticed something else, a pattern within the pattern, a deeper melody waiting to be heard. What she was about to discover would do more than solve an old mystery, it would open up entirely new frontiers in physics. 2 weeks after the breakthrough in the quantum computation chamber, Kira stood before the assembled Galactic Scientific Council. The grand amphitheater of the Institute was filled to capacity, with beings from across the known universe gathered to witness what many were already calling the most significant scientific advancement in 3 centuries. The air hummed with anticipation as Kira activated the holographic display. Above the audience, the darkness equation bloomed into existence, its harmonics now visible across multiple quantum dimensions. But this time, she had added something new. Distinguished colleagues, she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, what you're seeing isn't just a solution to the darkness equation. It's a window into something far more fundamental. The equation shifted, its patterns expanding to reveal an even deeper structure. When we understand dark matter as a harmonic system, we discover that it's not just responding to universal mathematics, it's conducting them. Every quantum state shift, every dimensional oscillation, follows patterns that humans have known about since we first started making music. Dr. Zyrix, now positioned among the council members, leaned forward. His geometric patterns had developed a new configuration in recent days, one that Kira had learned to recognize as respect. But the real discovery, she continued, manipulating the display, is what these harmonics tell us about the structure of spacetime itself. The equation transformed again, revealing layers of mathematical beauty that drew gasps from the assembled scientists. The universe isn't just mathematical, it's musical. And once we understand its symphony, we can begin to play new songs. She demonstrated, adjusting variables in real time. Dark matter coefficients shifted like notes on a cosmic scale, creating patterns that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. Yet there they were, as clear as a Mozart sonata. Using these principles, we can potentially manipulate dark matter directly. Imagine ships that sail on quantum harmonics, energy systems that tap into the universe's fundamental rhythms, even ways to detect and communicate with other dimensions through mathematical resonance. A Centaurian council member raised several appendages. You realize what you're suggesting goes beyond theoretical physics. This could revolutionize everything from space travel to energy production to computational science. Exactly, Kira smiled. And the best part? The basic mathematics behind it are so fundamental that any species capable of making music could understand them. This isn't just a human discovery or an alien discovery, it's a universal one. The amphitheater erupted in discussion, thousands of beings debating the implications of what they just witnessed. But Kira wasn't finished. There's something else, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Something we found hidden in the deeper harmonics. She adjusted the display one final time, revealing a pattern so beautiful it brought tears to several species' visual organs. The universe isn't just playing a symphony, it's playing many symphonies, all interconnected, all harmonizing in ways we're just beginning to understand. And somewhere in those harmonies might be messages we've been missing, music from other universes, even echoes from the Big Bang itself. As the implications of this sank in, Dr. Zyrex floated down to stand beside her. When you first arrived, he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle, I thought teaching you would be an exercise in futility. Instead, you have taught us all something invaluable. Not just about physics, but about the danger of assuming any species has a monopoly on understanding the universe. Kira nodded. Every civilization has something to contribute. Humans might be young, we might not have quantum computers in our brains or the ability to perceive 11 dimensions naturally. But we have something else, the ability to find connections in unexpected places, to hear the music in the mathematics. The council chambers buzzed with excitement as teams of scientists from different species already began forming, eager to explore the implications of this new understanding. Human musical theory was being rapidly integrated with advanced alien mathematics, creating new fields of study that would keep researchers busy for centuries. As Kira watched the collaborative energy fill the room, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had done more than solve an equation or prove humanity's worth. She had helped bridge the gap between species, between art and science, between the physical and the mathematical. So, Dr. Zyrex's patterns shifted in what she now recognized as amusement. What's next? Kira grinned, gesturing at the still dancing equation above them. Now we learn to dance to a whole new kind of music.